Morning, LifePoint Church. It's good to be here. It's really good to be here. I'm excited to be here for a number of reasons. One, because we get to lift up and magnify the name of Jesus together. And we get to center our gathering around communion, remembering his sacrifice for us. But also because we're starting a new series that I'm really excited about. We're going to do a year-long series, and to most people, to non-LifePoint people, that sounds like a long time, but we're in the book of Matthew for ages. So we're like, it's a blink of an eye, folks. But this series, this year-long series that we're going to do, we're calling the story of the Bible. And the reason that I wanted to do this is this. I don't know, when you look at this, when you pick up this, like, I don't know what you think about how much you know about this, but I'm guessing there's a spectrum of where you would fall on your knowledge of what's in the pages of this book. Research has shown that biblical illiteracy in the church is rising. That our knowledge of the Bible in the last few generations has decreased significantly. And it's true. This is not something that we're saturated in, but it's really true if you compare us to the average Jewish person living 2,000 years ago in Israel. Like the people that Jesus grew up with, the people that Jesus hung around with, the people that he had conversations with, they were saturated in this. The average Jewish person at the time of Jesus had the first 5 books of the Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, had them memorized, knew them by heart. This blows my mind. So we have chapters and verses, right? So you can find where you want to go. So if you're going to go to Psalms chapter 101, verse 3, and I was going to quote that, you could all then find that really quickly. Well, that's not the way it worked. First of all, the Bible was in different scrolls. It wasn't in one scroll. It wasn't in one book. It was in different scrolls. And so the way that you would figure out what someone else is talking about is they would mention the first 2 words in the sentence, and then everyone would know what sentence they were talking about. Rather than saying, in Exodus chapter 2, verse 4, they would just say the first 2 words of Exodus chapter 2, verse 4, and everyone would know, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I don't just know that sentence, but I know the paragraph, and I know the context, and I know the whole story. Could you imagine if that's how we tried to function here? We'd all be lost. That'd be totally lost. But they were saturated in the scriptures, right? This was their story. It was their history. It was their present. It was their future. This was their story. They talked about it in the morning. They talked about it at night. They talked about it during the day. They had conversations about it. This is what they talked about around the water cooler, right? This is what they talked about when they were thinking about the weekend. They weren't talking about, the college football games that were happening. They weren't talking about, the professional football games that were happening. They were talking about the volleyball season. They were not talking about band practice. They were talking about the Bible. Like, this is what they were talking about. They were saturated in the story of Scripture. And because of this, they picked up on so much more than we do. It's amazing to me how much I miss. And this is my job to study the Bible. And yet, I miss so much of what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to do, in a year, the story of the Bible. We're going to split up into 4 chunks. We're going to do the story of heaven and earth. We're going to do the story of the Messiah during the season of Advent. We're going to do the story of Jesus, and then we're going to do the story of the church. Now, many of you may be thinking to yourself, oh no, we're about to embark on a year of topical messages. We're not. Nay, it's okay. You're all right. You'll be fine. It's going to be very similar to the way that we do things now. We're going to be in the scriptures. We're going to be unpacking verses. We're going to be unpacking chapters. In fact, the first section, we're going to spend 2 months, 8 weeks in Genesis chapters 1 through 3. Right? The story of heaven and earth takes place in Genesis chapter 1 through 3. And these chapters, we could spend a year in these 3 chapters. They are rich. They have so much depth in them. And the way that it works, the way that they set up the Hebrew scriptures of the Old Testament is these 3 chapters teach you not only how to read the rest of the scriptures, but they begin to then to drip all of these themes that will continue throughout the rest of the scriptures. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to pick up on the major themes, 8 of the major themes that happen in these chapters. And when you begin to realize that these are the major themes throughout Scripture, you'll see it as you read through the Scriptures. When you read through the history, when you read through the Psalms and the Proverbs, when you read through the prophets, when you read through Kings, like you're going to see these things come up over and over again. And then when you read the New Testament, when you read the Gospels, when you read the letters, you will see these themes over and over and over, because that's the way that the Hebrew Bible works. That's the way the scriptures work, is they were people, men and women, who were saturated so deeply in the scriptures that it came out everywhere. They were telling a consistent story throughout. And I'm so excited. I took, for this series, I took a seminary class just on Genesis chapter 1, and my mind just, I mean, it's amazing. Genesis chapter 1 is brilliant. It really is. It might be the most brilliantly written work of art that I know of. It's incredible. We'll get into some of that. We won't be able to get into all of it, but we'll get into some of it. My hope is not to satisfy you, it's to make you hungry. Hungry to go home and get into the scriptures yourself, to chew on them, meditate on them yourselves. Now, we need to be aware of something before we enter in. Every single one of us has a worldview. All of us do. And think about it, if you wear glasses, right, your glasses have lenses, and you look through the lenses, and the lenses, if you're wearing glasses because they're corrective lenses, they shape the way that you see the world, right? That's what a worldview does. It shapes and shades the way that you see the world. All of us have it. And we're not like trying to have it, we just have it. It comes from our parents, it comes from our family, it comes from our friends, it comes from our schools, it comes from the sports that we play, the ways that we value things, the way that our community values things. It comes from the media that we watch, it comes from the news, television shows, movies, social media. Our lenses are shaped and shaded, and everything we come to, every conversation we come to, every interaction that we come to, we bring that with us. We also bring that to the Bible. And sometimes we put things into the Bible that aren't there. We see things into the Bible that aren't there. And sometimes we see things that are there, but we overemphasize, because of our worldview, what we think is important, that perhaps that's not what the Bible is actually emphasizing. Now, we can't get rid of this. We all have it. We just need to be aware that we have it. And so it's important that we know, what is the story that we think the Bible is telling? If I were to have a one-on-one conversation with every single one of you, it would take a long time. But if we were to do that and I were to ask you, what is the story of the Bible? We would get a wide variety of answers, right? There'd be a vast array of answers that people give of what is the story of the Bible. Or there'd be different details that each person would pick up, but I'm guessing there would be similar themes that would come throughout. If you were to poll the average churchgoer in America and ask them what the story of the Bible is, I'm guessing that this would be the story that they would tell. That the Bible is a story for me that teaches me what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do, so that when I die, I can go to heaven and not go to hell. If I were to put this in like a pictorial form, in the form of an image, this is the way that I would display it. So basically, I'm the most important part of the story, that the story is about my life and what I'm supposed to do and not supposed to do, so that when I die, I can escape and go to heaven rather than get sent to hell. This would probably be the major story that most people would say that the Bible teaches. The good news is we can recognize it. The bad news is that is not the story that the Bible tells. It's not even close. It's not even close. And if that shocks you, then make sure you show up every week. But what I want to do is, for the first 2 weeks, this week and next week, I just want to look at this story that we bring, and I want to look at the early verses of Genesis and show that this is not the story that is told in the Bible. Now, this is kind of hard because, first of all, if you're anything like me, which you should be, just kidding. If you're anything like me, you think the world revolves around you. Now, you might not tell anyone else that, but you do. You wake up in the morning and you think about yourself. You think about what you're going to do. You think about what you're going to eat. You think about the responsibilities that you have. You think about, I don't know, your hopes, your dreams, your plans. You think about your job. You think about your desires. You think about what you're hoping to do. You think about your vacations. You think your world revolves around you. Now, you may also have a lot of responsibilities, little bitty responsibilities, right, that make a lot of noise and need to eat a lot, and you serve them. But I'm still guessing that even if you serve people very well, you still think a lot about yourself. I recognize this starting at a very early age, right? When I was a kid, I was a huge fan of Superman, and so I would dress up like Superman every single day. For real, every single day. I'm not exaggerating at all. I put on my blue tights. I put on my red underwear outside of my tights because that's how real men do it, right? I put on my Superman shirt with the emblem. I'd have my cape flapping in the wind, and then I would go and I would fight crime in the streets all day. Like, that's just what I would do. It's just like the way that I lived. When I started going to school, I would put my school clothes on over top of my Superman clothes because that's how Superman did it. Because you never know. You never know when crime's going to happen. You never know we're going to have to just bust out and be Superman, right? Now, do you know what I never dressed up as? Do you know who I never dressed up as? Jimmy Olsen. Anybody ever dressed up as Jimmy Olsen? No. If you're going to dress up as someone, you're going to dress up as Superman because he's the most important character in the story, right? I'm not Jimmy Olsen. I'm not Perry White. I'm not Lois Lane. I'm Superman. Now, I realized at some point that I couldn't fly, and so I had to have a new dream. So I began to put basketball as a thing. I was a huge fan of Michael Jordan. At that time, Michael Jordan was probably the most recognizable athlete in the entire world. And so I thought, hey, if I could be, as good as Michael Michael Jordan, he was good at other things, right? If I could be as good as Michael Jordan, if I could be like Mike, then everyone else would recognize that the story is in fact about me, that the world does in fact revolve around me, that I am the most important character in the story. Well, it didn't take long for me to realize that wasn't going to work out well. And so I became a musician. And I wanted to be a famous musician. I wanted to be a rock star. Because I felt like that would help people recognize that the story is about me. I knew the story was about me. I knew my life revolved around me, but I wanted other people to respect me. I wanted other people to applaud me. I wanted other people to think highly of me and realize the story is about me. And that's the common thread that I see throughout my life, is me trying to help people understand the story's about me. Now, maybe your life is similar. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's similar in some ways and not in others. But I think a lot of times what we do is we bring our understanding that the world is about me, that my life is about me, that I am the protagonist of the story, I'm the hero of the story, and we put it into the Bible and we think, oh, I'm the most important character of the Bible. And then we come across Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Doesn't take us long. But Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 says this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, how many of you guys are good at English? Come on, be honest. Okay. In English, you have different parts of a sentence. If you were to split it up into two parts, you might split up to the subject and the predicate. Yeah, totally. Come on. There we go. We got some English speakers in here. Nice. Yes. The subject of the sentence is the one doing the action, and the subject of the sentence is also how we know what the sentence is about. The sentence is about the subject. And what we see in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, the very first words on the first page of Scripture, who is the subject? God. Now, we gave you some homework. We said you should go home last week and you should read Genesis 1 over and over all week long and begin to look at the major words, the key words, things that are repeated, things that are emphasized. And if you did that, I'm guessing there is a word that stood out to you. It should be the word God. Will you show us that image? There, in this, I put together on one page, it's not a page, it's a slide, on one slide, Genesis chapter 1. And it goes to Genesis chapter 2, verse 3, because that is the first account of creation. sometimes the person who put the chapters and verses together didn't do a great job. But we could just go back to saying the first two words of the sentence, and then we'd be in trouble. Here we go. Genesis chapter 1, the very first account of creation, and I highlighted all the instances of God. That would be the Hebrew word Elohim, which is much more like his title than his personal name. We get to his personal name in Genesis chapter 2 when you're seeing this personal interaction between God and humanity. But this is like his title, like the king of the spiritual beings, right? God, Elohim, is up there. Do you know how many different times it is in this account? Close, very close. 35. 35. Now, and this, we'll get to this, but just as a little spoiler alert, what is 35 divisible by? 7. Yes, and 5, that's good, yes. But what you'll see is, a shocking amount of sevens in Genesis chapter 1. I mean, it's mind-blowing. Anyways, of the key words, God, or Elohim, is by far the most repeated word because Genesis 1 is trying to teach us something. It's trying to teach us what the story of the Bible is about. It's trying to show us, to demonstrate for us that God is the protagonist of the story. God is the hero of the story. And if you were to put a sentence together about the story of the Bible, God would be the subject of the sentence. Right? The story is about God. He's not the narrator behind the story. He's not the writer of the first 2 chapters who just kind of lets it go. God is living and active. He is actively sustaining the cosmos by the power of his word. God is alive and breathing life into the world as we speak. Just the other day, I was thinking about these things as I took my dog on a walk. And I was blown away. I live in this neighborhood where there's just giant trees just everywhere, and it's just beautiful. It's gorgeous. And I was thinking about how God is not just the person at the very beginning who spoke creation into being, but that God is the being who is still holding the cosmos together. And as I was looking at the trees and looking at the leaves and seeing the wind blow through, looking at the clouds and seeing the sky, I was just blown away thinking, God is doing this right now. He is currently right now holding my cells together. He is currently right now giving me the breath of life. He is currently right now not only holding the beauty together, but giving me the ability to see and take in the beauty of creation. God is the main character of the story. Now, this should make sense to us. I was oh goodness, I don't want to tell you how long ago it was. I was a freshman in college, and we, as a family, we got to go on a trip to Hawaii, which is beautiful. Hawaii is incredible. And my dad is the type of guy who wants his kids to do everything they can do at any place that you're at. And so we did all the things. Every time we went on vacation, we did all the things. I just wanted to swim in the hotel pool, basically, the whole time growing up, but we would do all the things. And I'm really grateful now looking back on it. But one of the things that we did in Hawaii, and I remember my dad telling us, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to go on a bike ride to the top of the volcano on Maui. And I was like, that's fine, until he said, yeah, we got to get up at 2 a.m. Now, for many of you, you don't even know that 2 o'clock comes twice a day. It does. And the reason that we got up at 2 a.m. is because we had to be at the top of the volcano at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. We drove up there. We didn't have to bike all the way up there. I could not have made that happen. I'm not Lance Armstrong. So we're up there, and there's a thing about 3 a.m. At 3 a.m., is there any sunlight? No. None. There's no sunlight. There's none sunlight at all, right? It's pitch black. And we're up here on the top of this volcano, right? The highest point on this island, surrounded by ocean as far as you could see, and it's pitch black. And so you look up, and I had never seen so many stars in all my life. There were thousands, there were millions of stars that we could see, and it was magnificent. Right, you could see the shading of the Milky Way. You could see all these stars. They were so clear and sparkling. It was brilliant. And I'm standing here like just in awe of the sky and awe of these stars on top of this mountain, on this island, surrounded by the ocean. And do you know what I didn't think? I didn't think, whoa, I'm awesome. I'm huge. I'm important. I matter. I didn't think to myself, how come everybody isn't looking at me right now? Like at 3 a.m. on top of this mountain, how come the crowd is not looking at me? Like, what in the world? What, you should be looking at me right now. I didn't think that. You know what I thought? I thought, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I am tiny. I am insignificant. I'm one of 7.753 billion people in the world. And this world is a tiny speck in our solar system. This solar system is a tiny speck in our galaxy, and our galaxy is a tiny speck in the universe. I didn't think, wow, the story must be about me. I thought, whoa, the story must be about God. Now, how many of you in here are avid biography readers? You just got to get the latest biography. There's a couple of you. I'm so thankful that there are some of you in here. But the vast majority of us don't read biographies. There's a reason why very few people have biographies written about them. It's the same reason why very few of us will pick up one of those biographies, much less read them. It's because in the scheme of the universe, in the history of humanity, our lives are not that interesting. This is why we have to spice them up on social media. It's why we need to add a filter. It's why we need to have a gimmick. It's why we got to have a soundtrack, right? It's why we've got to take just the highlights of our life or the lowlights of our life and put them on display in a creative way, right? In a compelling way. Otherwise, people are not going to be interested. You're not going to get their attention because our lives are not that interesting. Jennifer, that's my wife. Her life is very interesting. But she's not the average person, right? I don't know what she's doing with me. But that's just the reality. So it's good news that the Bible is not about me. The Bible is about a divine being who is all-powerful, who is all good, who is holy, who dwells in unapproachable light, who can speak the cosmos into existence. That is a story worth reading. Right? God is the subject, and that is good news. But that's not the end. If we were to give one sentence about what the Bible is about, God is indeed the subject, but the sentence would not be complete if we stopped it right there. This is what I love, the way that the gospel writers did this, specifically Matthew, Luke, and John. So Matthew, in the book of Matthew, remember Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, you guys remember we were all there like 7 years ago? Matthew used the word Genesis in that first sentence when he's talking about the beginnings of his story, when he's talking about Jesus, because he wants to hearken our mind back to Genesis. John does it this way. I love it. In the book of John, chapter 1, starting in verse 1, says this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. Now, just a side note. When I was in college and I was in seminary, and I was talking to people about if someone has never read the Bible before, like what is a good place to get them to start? And overwhelmingly, everyone said John. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. If you make it past that sentence, you've never read the Bible, I'm super proud of you, because that is maybe the most confusing sentence in all of the Bible. So imagine coming to the Bible for the first time. In the beginning was the Word. When you think of Word, what do you think of? Think of a group of letters that come together and have some sort of meaning. What do you mean, the Word? There's loads of words in the English language. There's loads of words in the Hebrew language, like which word was in the beginning? Okay? And it says, and the Word was with God. And okay, the word's with God. You got God, and you've got the Word, this word, whatever word it is, this mysterious word, this grouping of letters is with God. And then it says, and the Word was God. And you're like, Hold up. What? The Word was with God and the Word was God. How can the Word be with God and was God? What in the world? And it says, He was in the beginning with God. Whoa! No, now the Word is a He. The Word is a person. It's not a bunch of letters. I don't understand. Right? Right? This is John beginning to unpack the Trinity. But I love what John does. He makes sure that we are acutely aware that in the first sentence of Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, when it says Elohim, that Jesus is in that word. Jesus is in the very first sentence of the Bible. Jesus was at the beginning with God and was God. All things came into being through him. And here's why this is so beautiful. John says that Jesus, or the Word, took on flesh and dwelt among us. So God, the God of the universe, put on skin and bones and walked around with humanity. And I want to think, why in the world would God do that? So God is infinite, right? Why would he limit himself to be finite in Jesus? Like to be in one location. It says in the scriptures that Jesus limited himself and lived a completely human life. Like there were things that Jesus didn't know. There were things that Jesus couldn't do. He got hungry. He got tired. He got thirsty. He bled. He wept. He died. Why would God do that? Now, I'm super thankful for my life. I really am. But if I was God, I would not choose to live this life. I mean, life's hard. And we live in America. Life's hard. There's a lot of pain involved in life. There's a lot of suffering involved in life. There's a lot of difficulty involved in life. It's about basically learning that I'm not going to get what I want. That when I was told that I could be anything I want, I have to now relearn that that's not true. I can't be anything that I want. I can't do anything that I want. The world does not revolve around me. Why would I want to become a human? Why? Have you ever played a game and not tried your hardest? There's some of you who are not competitive, you've done that, bless you. But for the rest of us who are competitive, you've never not tried your hardest. Why would you not try your hardest? That's silly. My mom and I grew up and we would play ping pong. And she would just demolish me. I'm like 3 years old. Like she would just demolish me. And then under the table tennis, under our table, we would lift it up, and there was a scoreboard, Mom and Brady. And every time she'd mark it down, Mom, 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 right? She always tried her hardest. Why would you not? Can you imagine being God, infinitely powerful, infinitely wise, knowing everything, can control everything, holding everything together right now? And then you say, I'm going to choose to limit myself and walk around in skin and get zits. Yeah. Why would you do that? The reason God did that is because of his legendary love for humanity. See, what happened is God creates the universe, and then he creates humanity, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, as the pinnacle of his creation, as the crescendo of his masterpiece. He creates humanity to rule with him. And then what does humanity do? I don't really want to listen to you. I don't really want to do things your way. I'm going to do things my own way. I want to be my own God. I want to choose what's right and what's wrong. I want to be like you so I don't have to listen to you, so I don't have to trust you, so I don't have to rely on you. And humanity rebelled against God, turned their back on God. And the results of that first sin are massive. Every ounce of brokenness, every ounce of sickness, every ounce of pain, every ounce of evil you see in the world is a result of our choice to rebel against God. Like we totally just corrupted his creation. And yet, God so loved the world. He so loved humanity that he took on flesh, that he became a human, that he lived a human life. He suffered and died so that we could be invited into his family, so that we could continue to be with him, so that we could rule and reign with him. What we see in Jesus is that, yes, the story is about God, but it's about God and his epic love for humanity. It's about God and his radical pursuit of humanity, of us, pursuing our hearts, giving up himself so that we might be able to have life with him. This is just incredible, and it blows my mind. If I were to think about the sentence of the Bible, the sentence that the Bible should tell, and to think about myself, I don't belong as a comma in that sentence, right? I'm a tiny speck in a gigantic universe, a tiny speck just in the population of the world. Like, humanity, like, what are we? What are we? And yet he has elevated us to the predicate. He's elevated us to be the direct object of his love. Think about it this way. Let's think about it in terms of Marvel, okay? Because that's just how I think. So Iron Man, he may not be everyone's favorite character, but he's my wife's favorite character. Iron Man is Jennifer's favorite character. How silly would it be for me to be super frustrated at Marvel because they didn't cast me as Iron Man? That would be pretty silly, right? I mean, I'm not even an actor, right? I'm not even qualified to be an extra in that movie. But for me to just be miffed and just be like walking around in a tirade, ran against Marvel, say, I cannot believe they chose RDJ. I mean, really, come on. Me, I would have been so much better than him. Like, why would they not choose me to be Iron Man? That would be silly, right? Because I don't belong in the movie. But then what if all of a sudden I get elevated to the status of Pepper Potts, to his love interest? Like, that would be pretty radical. And that's what's happened in the story of the Bible. The story about the creator and sustainer of the universe has elevated these specks of dust to be his love interest, to be the direct object of the sentence. Can you believe that? That God would do that for us? Why in the world would he do that? It doesn't make any sense unless he has this incredible love for humanity. He's elevated us to this status of his love interest, taken dust and made them image bearers, made them sons and daughters. Think about that. I want to invite the band to come back up and help us respond. And as they do, just ponder that for a second. That God did that for us. You know what captivates my mind when I think about the story of the Bible is that God, the infinite creator of the universe, he cares about insignificant stories. He cares about the story of the youngest child who was basically forgotten when Samuel came to anoint the next king. His dad paraded all of his brothers in front of Samuel, and then his dad was done parading sons in front of Samuel, and Samuel had to ask, wait, are you sure you don't have any other sons? And then Jesse was like, oh yeah, there is that one other one. He's out in the field like tending the sheep. You sure you want him? And God elevated David to the king, to the status of king. God cared about the insignificant story of a young teenage girl living in the middle of nowhere, Nazareth, in the corner of the empire of Rome that just like no one even cared about. And yet God cared about her. He cared about the insignificant story of a prostitute named Rahab. He cared about the insignificant story of a guy named Gideon who was the least in his family, whose family was least in his tribe, whose tribe was least in the nation of Israel. God cares about insignificant stories. And this speaks powerfully to me because my entire life I've wanted to be significant. I've wanted to matter. But what I've been told over and over and over with every step of my journey, in the scheme of the world, I don't. My life is not that interesting. It's not that impressive. I don't matter that much. I remember when I was a musician, I couldn't wait for people to ask me what I did for a living. Because it's cool to say you're a musician. I mean, come on. So what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a singer-songwriter. What do you do? Oh, I travel around and do concerts and stuff, sign autographs. Yeah. Like, that sounds awesome. You know what doesn't sound awesome? What do you do for a living? I'm a pastor. What was that? I'm a pastor. What? I couldn't hear you. Yeah, see, I don't want to tell people I'm a pastor because they automatically have all these assumptions about me as soon as I say that, right? Whatever status I had in their mind before, it automatically went down. They're like, oh no, he's judging me right now. And I am, but I just don't want them to think that, right? Like, I mean, it's so much better to say you're a musician than a pastor. And then they follow up with, oh, you are. Oh, okay. Where are you a pastor? I'm like, how familiar are you with Illinois? And if anyone ever asks where I'm from, and then I ask them how familiar they are with Illinois, and they say, oh, I'm not very familiar, I just say, I live in a suburb of Chicago. It's just about 5 hours southwest of Chicago, yeah, because that's all anyone knows about Illinois, right? See, they don't know that, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn grew up across the river from Quincy, Illinois. Like, they don't know that. They don't know about the tower. They don't know there's a place in the world where you can get nachos and pasta under the same roof, right? They just don't know that exists. They don't know that there's a magical land where you can drop off your kid for surgery and then go shop at Bed Bath & Beyond. Bath & Body Works, right? They don't know that this place exists. And so the world can tend to think that places in the Midwest, small towns in the Midwest, don't matter. Because we elevate big cities on the coast. That's kind of the way that our world works, our culture works. It's easy to feel insignificant, that your story doesn't matter. And I love the story of the Bible, particularly as it brings out Jesus, because Jesus declares with his life that we matter to him, because he gave up his own life. It's been so neat to just kind of sit and relish in this week. And just hear God speak over me. You matter to me. Your story matters to me. You don't need to be wise. You don't need to be funny. You don't need to gather a following. You matter to me. If this is the last message I ever preach, I matter to God. If the only person I ever disciple from here on out is my wife, I matter to God. If I don't ever have a biography written about me, I matter to God. That no matter how insignificant my story may appear in the scheme of the world, God is interested in my story. And he's interested in your story as well. No matter how insignificant you feel, no matter how mundane you think your life is, God cares about your story. Psalm 139 is all about that. Where can I go from your presence? Where can I run from you? You are with me always. You think about me all the time. God thinks about you all the time. He sings over you with sweet melodies. He has forgiven you. He has redeemed you. He's invited you into his family. Jesus said, do you know what I'm doing right now while we're sitting here right now? You know what he's doing? He's preparing a place for us. Jesus is preparing a place for you, and he's preparing a place for me. You know what else? He's got an inheritance waiting for us. Right? Dust, we're dirt. And he's elevated us to image bearer, to son and daughter, to brother, to sibling, to someone who's going to get an inheritance from him. You matter to God. Your story is significant to God. This is why I love the story of the Bible, why I'm so excited to discover and rediscover it every single week from here on out, because it tells a story of an incredible God and his legendary love for us.